Good evening, and welcome to the spring webinar series, Resources for Cannabis Businesses. My name is Natalie Darvis, and I am the chair of the business department of Oaksterdam University, the first and longest running cannabis college in the world. I'm excited to be your moderator this evening for tonight's topics on inventory management. We are here tonight because the Department of Cannabis Regulation has officially launched the Business Licensing and Compliance Assistance, or BLC program, to assist social equity applicants in the city of LA with obtaining a commercial cannabis license and operating a successful cannabis business. This series is part of broader BLC program efforts, which also include live webinars with different subjects and experts, checklists, worksheets, and other management tools you can download and use, self-directed online education on important topics related to running a successful cannabis business. This is all done through the BLC's new learning management system, which is usually referred to as the LMS. Please visit cannabis.lacity.org for more announcements on our ever-expanding BLC program. As part of the city's social equity program, DCR has launched the BLC LMS portal, where you now have access to these recorded webinars in addition to online courses and digital resources made especially for you. Information on how to access this LMS will be in the chat this evening. And please note, there is a much longer educational series on tonight's topic that is already live in the LMS. So please check out the series on advanced inventory management in the BLC LMS portal. So before we get started with tonight's topic, we have a few housekeeping rules. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and can be viewed after the editing process via multiple channels. You will be muted with cameras off for the duration of the webinar. So this means that your camera and audio functions will not be available to you during this session. However, you will be able to see and hear all of the panelists. There is an open chat box where you can interact with one another for networking or comment on the information. Please ask questions about tonight's subject matter, inventory management, in the Q&A box. We are gathering them and will be responding to as many of your questions as possible throughout tonight's webinar. So keep those questions flowing this evening. You are encouraged to utilize the Q&A box at the bottom pane of your Zoom screen. Chat is available for interaction with other participants. And if you use the Q&A box for questions, everyone will be able to see the questions when they are answered. And just a friendly reminder, please use caution when sharing personal information in a public forum and keep your questions focused on tonight's topic as it's going to move fast. So without further ado, it is my esteemed pleasure to introduce you to tonight's subject matter expert, Wally Wong. Wally Wong is a diversity and equity advocate across many industries in Los Angeles. As an educator, he develops and teaches decolonized writing curriculum at UCLA. Wally is also the head of education for Meadow Software and the founder of the Working Group, a national cannabis social equity coalition that provides free to the public baseline policy recommendations for true access and profit participation in the cannabis economy for communities destroyed by the war on drugs. Wally has created and continues to execute access-driven cannabis education programs in Sacramento, Oakland, New York City, Washington, D.C., and here in LA. Born in Canada to Chinese Jamaican immigrants and raised in Texas, he's traveled and lived throughout North America, but now he and his son Red call the City of Angels home.
Thank you.
Yeah, good evening, Wally.
Good evening. Good evening.
Yeah, it's great to have you here.
Yeah. It is a beautiful, wonderful afternoon once again in our fair city of Los Angeles. I am so happy to be here again.
Great. We love that you're here. So why don't you go ahead and start your screen share and let's dive into this amazing content on inventory management.
Definitely. Can everyone, Natalie, can you see my screen right now?
Yes, everything looks fabulous.
So here we go, everyone. If you were with us over the previous inventory management, we talked at a really high level, right, regarding inventory workflows. And in this hour, and it could be 3 hours. So when Natalie says that it's going to be recorded and be available and that it's on the LMS, the learning management system, please go back. Because if there is one thing that is so important that literally equates to profits in for your cannabis business is what we're going to be talking about tonight, which is cycle counts. Cycle counts are the baseline of all inventory functions inside cannabis. There's a lot of reasons for that, right? Because remember from where we started before, that every inventory transaction, if you've got a pen and paper and you weren't with us before, every inventory transaction happens in 3 places. It happens in the real world. It happens in your inventory management system or your POS, and it happens in Metric. Metric is the state mandated track and trace system that you have to report, okay? And we're gonna backtrack a little bit just so we can all cover. Remember, Metric, it's not a tool to run your business. It is not RFID tags, or it's not tracking cannabis, okay? It is a ledger. I need you all to realize what that is. Metric is a ledger. It only counts what is sent to you and what you distribute through your state license. The challenge for all cannabis businesses and entities on the supply chain are to keep these 3 worlds accurate. All right, it's to keep these 3 numbers of inventory accurate as we move forward. And the core baseline of doing that is what we call cycle counting. It's the physical count of inventory. It must be done every 30 days as mandated, but it should be done more frequently. How, and people ask how frequently? You should be cycle counting every single product category at least once a week in your retail operation. Minimum twice a month. But if we break it down to just the product categories, because that's a lot, right? They used to do it when cannabis just started. What it used to be is everybody stays late. Once a month, everyone stays late. Now, because of technology, we can break it out into product categories, but you should be counting each product category at least once a month, okay? It marries the 3 worlds of inventory like we talked about. So to do a cycle count, you have to physically count all of the products in your store and compare the results to the quantities that are recorded in your inventory management software and point of sale, or what's called the point of sale system, and in Metric. That's what we're doing. We're counting everything and we're comparing it to see what is accurate. Ideally, these numbers will always match, but in reality, this is rarely the case. Okay, it's the nature of it. It's the nature of trying to keep these 3 very different data points all together. The Department of Cannabis Control requires retailers to reconcile their physical inventory with their inventory records once every 30 days. And that's a benefit to you. I'll be quite frank. I'm on the other side of this. That's a good thing that they require that. Please adhere to that. That's for your own benefit. So at a minimum, you need to do it at least once a month, but it's a really good idea, like I said, to be executing these once a week per product category. The only way to find discrepancies between your assumed inventory numbers and actual inventory numbers is to do a physical count. This is the process that marries the 3 worlds of cannabis inventory. And let me say before we go to this next slide here, okay? The challenge, if we were all just running coffee shops, this wouldn't be a big deal, right? You know, we can have a single point of sale system. We can have the little thing up. If you're short 10, you can add 10 real, not a big deal. But because of compliance, because of state mandate, because all of this equates to what we're engaged in the cannabis industry, you have to do it. Okay, and it's and that's what's that separates cannabis from a relative retail other retail industries. Okay, so let's review this concept that we talked about regarding the 3 worlds. Okay, which I've talked about in other webinars. Cannabis inventory exists simultaneously in 3 different worlds, and that the movement of the inventory has to be verified in all 3 worlds to stay in compliance. First, there's the physical world. Okay. And we're going to game it out. Imagine you have a distributor dropping off the inventory to your location, okay? So first, there's the physical world. They come and they make the drop, your ordered product, to your door. You have to confirm that the actual products being delivered to you match up with the record of the transfer that was reported to Metric, okay? So he sends over, let's say 50 edibles in the van. You open the box, you count that there's 50, but he's also sent a digital transfer from license to license in Metric. So now Metric is saying, have 50 been, have you received them? Okay, have you received them in metric? When the transfer is completed or received in a metric, the recipient has to verify it in metric by accepting the goods. That is a very, very important, that point right there, accepting it in metric. It's physically there. Do we accept it in metric? Into the real worlds of these things, often distributors make mistakes, right? Do you send it back? Because you haven't accepted it in metric, you have the ability to return it there. Okay, because the distributor can pull back the transfer from their side. That's why this is so important, that you don't accept the transfers in metric before you physically verify them. Because if you accept them, that it initiates another workflow, which is the transfer back, or what we call the rejection. You've accepted chain of custody, you now have to reject it back, and it starts up a whole thing, and the driver has to come back. So that's why we say you open the box, you count. Once you verified at minimum the count and the products, now you can accept it in metric. Once that's done, because we've done physical world and metric, now we bring it into the inventory management system, and for the retailers, the point of sale system. Okay, if you're up the supply chain, you could be very well using a distribution software, management software, or if you're on the manufacturing, you could be using that. But very likely you'll just be, you could be also managing that in spreadsheets. But for the retailers, now you have to bring it in into the third world, which is the point of sale system. Okay, because from the point of sale system, we're going to sell out to the end consumer. Most cannabis businesses have inventory, which is is inventory software that is integrated with metric. Okay, so there's a lot of automation on this, which makes it easier to verify the transfers, but you still have to do the right steps in all three places, or your cycle counts will be off. Okay, this is another great example. Is the software is going to do quite a bit. It's going to do quite a bit, but it's still, don't forget, it is your name on the license. It is not the software companies. If there is a mistake, you can't point. This is my point. This is what I see every day. You can't say that the software messed up, because the software's name isn't on the license. It's your name on the license, okay? All right. So let's take a closer look at why we do cycle counts and why they're so important. It's required by law, like we talked about. You have to reconcile your inventory every 30 days, and you're also required to inform regulators if the discrepancy between your physical inventory and your metric inventory is greater than 3%. I'm going to say that again, because this is an important term. You have to reconcile your inventory every 30 days, and you're required to inform regulators if the discrepancy between your physical inventory, what you have in your store, and your metric inventory, what is in your metric account, is greater than 3%. That is what is called, the term is called variance, and it's a formula the state uses, okay? However, you shouldn't be just be doing cycle counts just because regulators are making you do it. Dispensaries and retail operations and all cannabis operations that conduct cycle counts on a regular basis see a dramatic decrease in inventory discrepancies. Okay, the broad retail term is what we call shrinkage. If we called it shrinkage, this is loss prevention. What ends up in people's pockets, what gets dropped, what gets put on a shelf that we forget about, right? We call it shrinkage. Regardless of whether it's because of fraud, theft, or human error, if you reduce the number of missing SKUs, okay, SKUs, that's the term for products, in your store, you will end up realizing higher profits. Why? We say that, I say that all the time. People, you want to know why? Specifically in cannabis, is because there's, if you make mistakes, number one, you can be it can be grounds for audit. If this is the other side of all this, it can be grounds for audit. So you're incurring costs on this. Once again, if you don't take this on at some point, because it is cannabis, you're going to have to hire someone to do it. Okay, again, we're taking on costs. Then there's just plain inefficiencies. If you're unable to fill the orders at a fast rate, And these are one of the margins in terms of labor that we're talking. If you're unable to fulfill orders in a expedited rate, you can't do business as quickly. Okay. And don't forget, we are in the business. It is a margin driven business. It is a volume driven business. So that's what we mean. A more efficient inventory. You have less labor costs. You have less time. People running clock late. Remember what I said at the beginning? Everyone stay late. You don't have to do that. You've got a much more efficient SOP to run your inventory and keep it accurate, worked into the business. Cycle counts, and this is the other point in terms of where it's so important in terms of the profit. If you don't have accurate inventory data, you don't have accurate profit data. Cycle counts help you evaluate the performance of your inventory. When you actually see what is selling and moving off your shelves, and specifically what is not, you can make better purchasing decisions and optimize your product offerings. Okay, for all the new licensees in the room, ordering your inventory is not set it and forget it. We covered it. Go on the LMS. This is like why this is wonderful. We get into really granular in terms of showing how profit margins work. It is a constant dynamic activity of changing your product offering. The dispensaries, you're always going to have the usual suspects as the top sellers, but you don't make the margins on those products. It's the stuff underneath it. Remember, this is the problem. Just think of it as milk. Okay, you've got perishable product, limited marketing channels. This is the challenge of cannabis. You have to move it, and if you don't have accurate counts, you don't know what is moving. Okay, all right. So there's a few different ways to go about doing a cycle count. Perhaps the most intuitive method would be to use a list of all the products and quantities that you should have in your store. So you print up everything that we got with the counts based on your inventory management or point of sale system. But if you're doing cycles counts this way, you'll create a huge confirmation bias. What do I mean by that? As well as an opportunity for fraud. Okay, so what does that mean? So if I send the team out and I'm like, everyone go count the flower, go count the vapes, okay? And I have, I'm supposed to have 75 raw garden cartridges. What happens when you think when they count 76? Where do you think that 76 goes? Number 76 goes? Goes in someone's pocket? Yeah, it could. Right? This is the problem. That's what we say in terms of confirmation bias. When when the team already knows what it's counting. And also think of this as well. This is a big thing. You can't do these unless you have a really great modular system. You can't really do these when stores are open because you have to do what we call freezing the inventory. Okay, you have to freeze it because if you're doing it during store hours, the inventory is moving, right? It's a very difficult time to count. Many systems can account for that, but ideally you're doing this earlier or later in the afternoon or in the evening when it's closed or on the weekend. And exactly to the confirmation bias, and your employees get tired, they don't want to do it. They already know, they just start checking away. Number two, a slightly better way to approach this is to provide staff with a list of the products that should be in the store, but not the expected quantities of each, okay? So you eliminate some of the confirmation bias and potential for fraud, but not all of it, okay? Because there's gonna be other stuffs on the list. And the most effective approach is to perform what's called a blind count. A blind count is where there is no expected products or quantities are provided to the staff who are performing the cycle count. And not all systems can do this. Let me be very clear. Not all systems can do this. That way, employees simply put a count of everything they find and there's no confirmation bias at all, okay? Not all systems are able to do this because this gets into the labeling functionality of the systems, but some can. And because of that, this is the best way because they only count what they see. And then you or your inventory manager goes and reconciles that number. All right. So another approach to cycle counting is to perform rolling counts, which is what I was talking at the beginning, right? In this approach, the task of counting all the inventory is broken up over multiple smaller counting events. Okay, so the best way to think about this is breaking it up into a regular SOP, a regular workflow for the store that we're counting each product category once a week. So we can do Monday, we do flour. Tuesday, we do vapes. Wednesday, we do edibles. Thursday, we do tinctures. And around we go, right? So we're constantly executing the counts. There's several advantages to this approach. Many dispensaries choose to do their cycle counts this way because it makes the task easier to manage. It's much smaller. It's a much smaller amount to count. It's much more realistic. And on top of that, if the system you're using has good labeling, has package-specific labeling, which is so important, what this looks like is scanning with a little scanner, scanning and counting. You know, when you go to the grocery store late at night or early in the morning, and you see the people out with the boxes open, you catch them with that, and they're stocking and they got those little things. That's what they're doing. They're doing a version of us. They're restocking and also doing a cycle count at the same time. Okay, that's why you see them do it. That's why that's such a interesting time to go in the store if you're a weirdo like me who cares about inventory workflows. When you execute rolling counts, you can limit counting fatigue. That's what I brought up earlier about doing it so late at night. That's a real, very real thing, which limits error. And you can also structure cycle counts to be performed by multiple individuals in different parts of the store at the same time. So like I said, when you're doing this, you're going to have to freeze the inventory. You need to be sensitive to that. Okay. So if you're just doing one, you have to be aware of the time when you're freezing the inventory. Once again, some systems will account for the discrepancy. What does that mean? If it'll say you counted 52 and it'll actually say what's called a conflict. There's a conflict because a sale was executed during that, and it'll account for that. Not all systems do that, unfortunately. The other part of this, okay, and the last thing before I go into Q&A is this is where we were talking about it before we do some questions and answers about this. Not all systems are, the other part of this, right? This count, once it's executed, we need to adjust the package data inside Metric. That's the other part of this, right? Because we've executed the count in the physical world. We put it in the POS, the inventory management system. And now we have to execute in what's called a reconciliation inside Metric on these packages, okay? A good system, it's automated. When we do the count and we hit adjust the number, it adjusts everything. It adjusts the packages inside Metric, and it adjusts the package counts inside inside the point of sale. And once again, and I'll stop after this. Keep going. Don't forget, the point of sale is your listing across all your sales channels. Okay, because we've limited this to just talking about the point of sale. Don't forget, you have Leafly, you have Weedmaps, you have your online menu. Not all systems integrate across all of them. These all have to reflect the same count as well. Why? Because, especially because we're in Los Angeles, Weedmaps has a very large place in this space. If people don't see that you have a product and then they call and you don't have it, or they come to your store, you don't have it, very common. You don't like having that. That is the other, we're not touching on that because there's not a compliant portion, but that's an actual real world thing. So I'm going to stop talking there and we'll do some questions.
I think that was a really great business concern to bring up, right? That we have all these different worlds of inventory, but then we also need to think about our outward facing channels. Yes.
Yes, we've limited to all our discussions to like SOP and workflow.
Yeah.
But there is the other side of it is literally what the consumer is seeing.
Yeah.
And they're savvy. Southern California are probably the most savvy consumers in cannabis. I mean, it's a big, they like what they like.
Yeah.
And they go for the deals in that's what makes it such a competitive environment.
Absolutely. All right. Well, speaking of all of these cycle counts, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
You said that rolling counts can offer a lot of benefits, but isn't there some risk of introducing more opportunities for error when you're counting more often?
Yeah, great question. You can't think of it like that because
Okay.
for one thing, this is where that variance 3% comes in. DCC, I wish it was 5 to be honest, but I believe they average out your discrepancies or your mistakes over a 90-day period.
Okay.
And don't quote me on this, but it's pretty darn close to this. And then they average out your mistakes and then they provide you that 3% variance.
Okay.
Some systems provide a report that tells you your discrepancy variance very easily, that you can average it out. The expectation, and this is something that everyone should internalize as we're talking about, the expectation that it's not 100%. I mean, that would be wonderful, but let's be real, it's not. It's more of establishing for your own benefit that your numbers are pretty damn close. It may not be 100, but it's 90, 95, right?
Yeah.
That's a good place to work from. And that's the benefit of the rolling counts. There's going to be mistakes, of course, but that's why they built in smartly the variance inside it. Also, it is a very good look. If we were all going to go be seasonal workers at the Gap, I'm showing my age, I'm saying the Gap. What's like some hip thing?
I used to work at the Gap. I feel you.
Right. So did I, right? I did.
Yeah.
Old Navy in the building. But if we were seasonal workers, what did you spend like a good portion of your training on? Loss prevention.
Totally. Yeah.
That was like of the 3-day onboard, that was like 2.5 days of it. It is a good SOP regarding that because it's innate that this store runs a tight ship. That it just takes it off the table in terms of internal loss prevention.
Which is critical. Yeah, which is critical because there's such limited margins available in the cannabis space right now. So 100%. It makes sense. You got to keep track of your inventory. All right, next question from the audience. In another webinar, they were talking about delivery in the ice cream truck model for delivery. How do you track your inventory's metric when it's on the road like that?
It's a great question. Now we're going to go into the weeds. You can make me happy. All right. So there is, for those that y'all don't know, what's being discussed is there's 2 models for delivery in cannabis. Okay, and this is a very California thing. Think of it like we have what we call hub and spoke. When I say hub and spoke, just think pizza. Yep. Orders come in, 6 pizza orders come in, 6 pizzas go out with the guy. They get dispatched. Early on in the initial drafting of the regulations, they created what are called driver kits, the kit model. Okay, and the kit model is what's being referred to now, which now in the parlance of terms is ice cream truck. So by state, we can have $5,000 worth of inventory inside a car. Okay, and the question is, how do we track that? Number one thing for delivery operators, you have to think of everything through record keeping. What do I mean by that? You really have to have some workflow around all your record keeping, especially as you're scaling going forward. And this is a really great example. I shouldn't say many, a few systems automate all of what you're asking. Mm-hmm. So that is, I can have a master backstock inventory and I can transfer it to a car. And because what is called geofencing, so when I say geofencing, that means I can literally draw on a map and I can put a car in there. And when the customer comes and they put in their address, they're going to get that car's inventory, not what's in the depot, that car's inventory. When they execute the sale, the system will automate all of that. We'll pull from the correct package, we'll pull from that is in the car and do the correct report to state. Not all systems can do that. Okay, and there is a price on that. It's not a cheap functionality. There's 2 things I want to mention here that I brought up regarding the record keeping. Everybody should take advantage of that if you're doing ice cream truck, right? But there's 2 that we have to keep in mind. You're gonna have to build in if you don't have a really great system. You're gonna have to build in, and you should build in, a redundancy of spreadsheets for those drivers. Okay, every driver gets a spreadsheet of the inventory that is in their car, and ideally checking off. And when they check back in to drop cash off, they've adjusted when they close out for the day. Okay,
So you're reconciling from the physical world, and
yes, exactly. And then we're comparing of that inside the point of sale, but you want to have that level of record keeping for your own benefit as the operator. Because there's another one that you have to keep in mind, which is the driver's manifest. By state regulations, every car has to has a GPS logistics system. A good one out there will keep all this information. But if you're not using the good ones, right? Because the good ones come with a little bit of a price tag sometimes. You have to maintain all of that record keeping for your own benefit, okay? Like I said, look at what's auditable. Let me say what is auditable for the delivery team specifically, and make sure that you have some backup. You have some backup record keeping. And look, that once again, this is just built into the workflow. Driver comes in, he gets his kit, he gets his spreadsheet. When he comes back, he double counts. This is what is out of my kit. Turns in his cash and sales for the day. Done. We compare with that with what is in the point of sale system, what has been reported, and around we go.
And that makes sense, because oftentimes you're going to send your final or push your final sales data at the end of the day.
Actually, good, and actually not, Natalie.
Oh,
Yeah, this is not. That's not the prevalent majority. I'm actually really glad you brought that up. Most systems either don't do it. Okay, so you have to upload. Some systems require you to upload your sales data with a spreadsheet that you literally have to upload to Metric. There's that.
okay.
Then most of them do real time. Real time is not ideal. Then the other, and I'll tell you what, but let me say, and then the last one is batch reporting. Batch reporting is done at the end of the day. It's done at a specific time at the end of the day. Why is batch reporting better? Because in terms of inventory transactions and Metric, the reporting of a sale is final. It's the end. So if a mistake is made, most systems that report in real time, there's a huge thing with wastage. Because if there's a mistake made, you can't pull it back. You remember I was talking about with the transfers that you can pull it back. You can't do that to the consumer. If there's a mistake made, it is reported as wastage. And I'll be quite honest, a lot of teams throw away a lot of inventory because of that.
Absolutely. And fortunately for our audience, there's more information on compliant returns and how to manage that in the ways that you can in this series in the LMS on advanced inventory management.
Yeah, super important.
Great. All right. So let's learn a little bit more about this counting and how it's actually done in the store so we can all understand it better. So I'm sending it back to you, Wally. We've got about 25 more minutes.
All right. We're gonna get through as much as we can here. So how do we do cycle counts? So now that we know why we have to do cycle counts and looked at some of the most common approaches, let's take a closer look at how the actual process of the physical count is performed by staff. There are two different ways to count, either manually or with the assistance of software. In the manual count, that's what we talked about earlier, the spreadsheets. We use paper logs to record the products they count. Your paper log should have an intuitive layout that is easy for your staff to use. Look up, you can Google it, inventory count sheets. There's plenty, you can go Google it if you don't have one, but you should be developing them out of the spreadsheets you're using. Oh, you provided a template for a cycle count log that you can download in the LMS, my bad. So go on the LMS, you can download a cycle count log. You should also provide your staff with some sort of manual counting device. This is great. A clicker, like when you see people coming in and out of concerts and stuff, that helps a whole lot. While manual counting gets the job done, most retailers use some sort of point of sale or inventory management software to make completing cycle counts easier and less prone to error. This is done with scanning. Okay, the employee can scan the barcode on each unit and the count is then reported to the inventory software automatically. What is the caveat on that? Like I brought up, are the labels package specific? Because you can upload, some systems you can upload just the barcode and associate it to a product, but what you need that barcode to be associated to is the corresponding metric package okay, inside Metric itself. So after your staff finished a cycle count, what do you do now? You should have a procedure in place which defines how the results of a cycle count are reviewed and then actually used for compliance and purchasing decisions. You should have a manager, or if not two, compliant inventory managers who is responsible for reviewing a cycle count before any adjustments are made in Metric. That's a very important access and position to have, okay, is that you can actually adjust the counts in Metric. Not everyone can touch your Metric to address any discrepancies because this is a major compliance requirement for your business. You should see if the inventory discrepancies are happening more frequently in certain parts of your store, or where certain team members are performing the count. A manager should always check out the cycle counts to look for these kinds of issues and identify the best way to remedy them. Cycle counts also provide a visual representation of what is happening with sales. You might notice trends in how your product is moving based on the physical location of the items in your display cases. So a really great free tip. Most people don't get that. That's what's called product facing in retail. Sometimes these insights can help you rearrange your physical displays to increase your sales. All right. Once you complete your cycle counts, you'll probably have to adjust your inventory counts in Metric to match what you actually physically have in your stores. Some POS systems have automated this task in some way, but if yours does not, you will have to adjust your inventories manually from your Metric account. Okay, you're gonna have to log into your Metric, and there is a way to do batch reconciliations. There's a CSV template for that. But this is the world of Metric. Of course, it's not meant to be easy. It can be challenging. If the difference between your physical count and your Metric count is more than 3% of your total inventory, you're going to have to report that to the DCC, and they may do an audit. Please, everyone, right now, go into cannabis knowing you're going to be audited. Okay? You are. It's part of it. It is, and anybody that tells you different, that tells you anything, this is not 2 years ago. This is not a year ago. Currently, as we speak, there's a lot of audits going on. It's just part of the business, and it's part of, there's people hired to do it. It's their job. It's because it's such a highly compliant environment. So go forward knowing you will be audited. So don't catch you off guard. DCC also performs random spot checks of retailers for physical inventory counts. This is a great note. This is very true. A member of the DCC can show up and check the actual quantity of specific items in your store and compare them against what is in Metric, okay? This, once again, they come in and they actually check the package IDs. They check the transfers. They check them. I have operators, they go through that all the time, okay? This is why, especially for the delivery operators, to that question earlier that we're talking about, the ice cream truck, why the redundancy with the record keeping is your best friend. You want to do that. You want to do that. It's, you know, like my mother says, better you cry now than we all cry later.
That's true.
Little daddy and wisdom there.
I love that. I love that. All right. So I got a couple questions for you. So you've talked to operators who've gotten a visit from regulators who want to do an inventory spot check. What is it like? Like, what happens when the inspectors find discrepancies?
It's DCC, just to give you all a sense, this ain't no joke. DCC can carry guns. They're not messing around. Look to this. And they're not enforcing, they're doing an enforcement that is different than say, it's not like police enforcement, but yes, they can carry guns. That's a DCC folks. They work directly with the CDTFA, the state tax authority. Okay, so Metric is representative of taxes. When we say auditing, it's not only the discrepancy represents a loss of tax dollars. So this leads to tax, very, 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 very real thing. This leads to back tax bills. Okay, this is what they're looking for. The other side of it is, I can't stress this enough. DCC will work with you on this. If you're seeing, and this is once again why this is important to do this regularly. Look, everyone's learning here, including them. As long as you notify them they are fine with doing the reconciliations. It's when it gets it's when it gets to my nightmare scenarios that I deal with quite often, where it's a year out, 8 months, 9 months of discrepancies, then their ears perk up. And then it becomes a little bit of as you can imagine, a very different conversation in terms of why are you executing this massive adjustment inside your metric account, right? Because what you're doing, you're reconciling inventory you've already sold a long time ago. And they're aware of it, you're aware of it, everyone's aware of it. How are you getting those numbers if the inventory is gone? So what are we saying? Are we guesstimating? I mean, this is the challenge. So if you notice it and you're like, look, I'm still learning, I've only seen good reactions from DCC as far as to let them know, do not let it get out of control, because it'll shut you down. It will shut. If it doesn't shut you down because of them shutting your doors, which I've seen, it will shut you down because your back tax bill or your expense to get it correct is very high. If you have to get a cleanup is a very expensive, and there's I only know of probably 3 to 5 teams that do it well, and it's a big deal. You don't want to go into that space.
That's totally interesting. Well, thank you for that, like real life advice right there. So
Yeah.
what happens? Yeah. What happens when you do report a discrepancy? Do you still get in trouble?
No, not at all. That's why the system's set up the way it is. Once again, this goes back. This is metrics a ledger. Just think about it as balancing your checkbook. That's really what we're talking about. Natalie has a distribution, Wally has a retail operation. Natalie sends me 100. I have to report sales of 100 or reconcile or on that package, reconcile to that count of 100. This is the thing, right? And we didn't talk about this in this one, but I forgot to mention it. Metric is open-ended. This is why it's so good, is what we call it. We call it the truth teller of inventory. Because if Natalie sends me 100 of a package, I can sell 105. I can sell 125. I can go into negative. It does not put up a flag. You have entered a discrepancy. It doesn't do that. That's not how it works. It says this has gone into negative counts, right? Or if you've oversold it. It just says there's 125, 100 was sold, 125 sold this. Wastage on the other side. Wastage of too much of this product has happened, right? And that's why it makes it so good, because what are we doing? They're basically getting a blind count in your inventory all the time. They're being able to see exactly what's going on, and there's no you're unaware of it. That's why these cycle counts are so important.
That makes sense. All right. Well, we've got about 10, 12 more minutes, and it seems like we definitely want to avoid discrepancies if at all possible. So can you give us some tips that will help operators keep their inventory in line and get an accurate cycle count?
Let's ace this cycle count.
Let's ace it.
Let's see how we can set yourself up for an accurate cycle count every time. Okay. It all starts with receiving shipments of merchandise. So we'll talk about first. You want to make sure your back of the house, your storeroom, is well organized. So we have an inventory reception area, okay, and then a staging area. Even if it's just 2 different desks, because some of these, I've been into these properties, I know what y'all are dealing with. Even if it's a small space, even if it's 2 different stations, we're just calling them stations. You need to have a standard operating procedure, SOP, for every movement if you want to end up with an accurate cycle count, okay? So here we are, we're at the back door. When you receive a shipment of merchandise, first thing you need to do is verify that your product you receive match the products that are listed on the shipping manifest, okay? This is the inventory in the inventory receiving area. When we do this, we are verifying our inventory in one of the 3 inventory worlds, the real world. You will need to confirm the counts and the condition of the products that you're receiving in the real world before you accept it in metric, okay? If there's a discrepancy, you can reject the shipment. and send it back to the distributor without adding any additional metric steps for you and the team. And in fact, you can just not, if you've not accepted in metric, they can pull it. It's just in transfer status. It's not in reception status. Retailers who do a good job of maintaining inventory reception workflows can literally have thousands of transfers in their metric account that are just sitting there, who do not do a good job, I should say, who do not do a good job, have thousands of transfers sitting there. This is what an unintegrated system looks like. This is my nightmare scenario that I have to deal with quite frequently. Somebody told them that you don't need a cannabis specific piece of software. Their friend told them that. And they open it, and I ask them, hey, how bad's your metric? And they're like, oh, it's not that bad. Inventory is accurate. And then we open it up and it's thousands. You want to know what? 18, I looked at an account, has over 18,000 packages unaccounted for. Eventually, if they're not reconciled, you will likely have to deal with being audited, okay? This is a metric screen right here on the left. After verification in the real world, we accept the transfer in the second world metric. So we accept the transfer. For those of you that are waiting on approval or have gotten it, you get that that notification of doing that webinar to provide someone on the team a metric account. Do the webinar, learn metric. It's nothing crazy. It's a pain, but if you learn it, you get it out of the way and get good at it. It is a good thing to get good at. Remember, once you accept it in metric, you're responsible for all the package reporting if there are discrepancies, damaged goods, et cetera, et cetera. So once again, complete the check of the merchandise in the real world in the inventory reception area before you hit accept on your transfer, okay? Now we're in the inventory staging area, okay? And it's time to bring it into the point of sale area. So we're moving it into the area. This is where we're gonna, the third world, which is the point of sale. We want to barcode everything. A labeling station is so key in cannabis. The standard in the space is what's called a Zebra ZD410 printer. Most systems use the Zebra ZD410 printer. Check if you are about to open. Check with your this is so relevant. This is literally, it was my first meeting this morning. Check with the system what label printing they use. If it is the Zebra ZD410 or another one, you need to go and order it, even if it's months away from opening. You need to go order it today. Put it on your, because right now, because of the supply chain backup, it's very real. They're backed up. There's like a 6-month back order on some of these things. Because there's some crossover into what the systems use. And because they shut down the main area in China, there's a 6-month backup and they're actually double the price right now. So go and make sure to get your hardware purchase in if you're close to opening. It's a very important thing that's very relevant right now because of everything going on in the world. So once you accept it, we take the inventory to the inventory staging area. That is where we're doing the labeling, okay? 2 things on this. Like I said, some of the systems, if they're good systems, bring in associate the package data to the actual label that is on the item. Or you're gonna have to do an upload, which is not ideal, where you upload a spreadsheet with the barcode into the system and connect it to the product inside the point of sale. Either way, especially for the storefront retailers in the room, or the microphase storefront, you want to have some labeling system in place. And I know it's a challenge because I see it. Some of them are really good and they're automated and it makes it easy. Some of them are not, and I'm very well aware of that. The contents of the package must be verified. Package should be clearly labeled. New packages should be placed behind the older packages. Okay, so the organization of the flow of the back of the house, and this is what we talked about before, in a retail store is crucial to be compliant in a dispensary. If you can't keep track of your inventory, you'll be at risk of being audited, okay? So here's some back room tips. In metric, individual units of cannabis are grouped together in what are called packages. You keep helping me saying that. So just imagine a box is a package, just to simplify it. It's like a package, like 32 eighths, 132 grams are in a package, okay? And it's gonna have one of these these blue tags on it, which is a metric UID, okay? Remember, you need to open it up, verify. Now you want to, once you've identified it and you've clarified what's inside it, you want to put, and this is into your inventory, your actually inventory backstock room, right? Now we're in the stocking room. You want to attach that blue metric package tag to a bin, okay, of some sort, to the outside of the container so we can maintain that package together. After that, you also want to put physically arrange the products in a way that makes it easy for your employees to grab the older merchandise first. Remember, first in, first out, right? Sell the old milk. Remember, milk. Sell the old milk first. Put the newest packages behind the older ones on the shelf, so you're always selling inventory in the order it was received. Okay, so if you look, you'll see the item date that used by. Also, if you go really easy, go on Amazon and look up use first dated labeling for retail, and you're going to see all little different versions. There's some great stickers out there that say sell these first. Those are great. It makes it easier for the for your team. So we have so right now we're going to talk a little bit about the SOPs, okay? Standard operating procedures. And let me say this. The SOPs are not something that like the DCC and LA County are giving you homework. The SOPs, why we write these out in a very granular manner, step-by-step directions, is to hold your employees accountable. You can't improve unless you have something established. So if someone messes up, you say, hey, what did you follow the direction? Why didn't you follow the SOPs? I wrote it out for you exactly what you. Or if something needs to get improved, one of your employees says, look, I was doing the SOPs. There's some way that we can do this better. Now you adjust the SOP, and this is how we get to better efficiency. It should so an inventory intake SOP should detail all the steps involved in receiving shipments of merchandise from distributors, the steps that must be taken to check inventory for damage and verify items against the shipping manifest, and explain when and how packages should be accepted or rejected in metric. Then we have an inventory audit SOP that should define how you perform cycle counts and explain how the results of cycle counts are reconciled with your point of sale system and metric as required by law. And then we have an inventory control SOP. Generally, these processes include how and when to order stock, inventory storage and rotation, handling expired products, and so on. Then we have a power technology SOP, okay? Detailed steps on when power or technology goes down, should explain how sales records should be recorded manually into metric later. And then we have a customer returns SOP, should detail what items can be returned, how the items should be handled and stored, and how to report the return to your POS, your distributor, and metric. As you're kicking the tires and screening these inventory management systems, make sure to ask these. Take a screenshot of this. If you don't, take a screenshot of this right now. How do I bring in inventory? How do I do an audit of inventory? How do I control my inventory? What happens if there are outage, customer returns? You should, as you're going forward, you should ask that stuff. Most good systems will automate a lot of it. Teams are happy to show you, but some of them don't, and you should know what you're getting in. So we're right at, this is a good one.
Perfect timing.
Yeah, because right here, the templates can be found in the LMS. Please take advantage of this. People, I know a lot of teams have been requesting them. These templates are so great because before I was providing them, they're editable. They're so, this is how you get better, y'all. This is how you make more money with these SOPs. And I think people often think of them as homework and like, why are they making me do this? No, it's exactly the opposite. It's like measure twice, cut once. You can't hold people accountable and be like, why are you doing this? And can't get better unless something's in writing.
Absolutely. So yeah, all these templates are located in the LMS. You can go ahead and stop your screen share for, I got one last question for you tonight,
Yes.
Wally.
Yeah, that's what I'm here for. Let's do it. I got a couple minutes here.
All right. So what do you think is like the big takeaway from tonight's webinar for our audience? You know, if you were to say, the big key takeaway on cycle counting and inventory management. What are some final words you might have for our audience?
Inventory efficiency makes you more money.
Yeah.
More efficient teams, if we're just going to go on labor costs, the more efficient teams have less staff. Payroll, oh my gosh, payroll is a very real thing. And if you can run your operation with less bodies, you are making more money. And the more messy it is, look, this is why they have it doesn't go away, y'all. It doesn't go away. There's only so many ways to receive and sell cannabis in a compliant environment. There just are. That's the nature of the business you're in. So if anybody's in your area, be like, I know that it's not what it was. It's not, and this is what it is now going forward.
Absolutely. And we have an audience question that involves your company. So I'm just going to encourage them to go ahead and email you at wally@getmeadow.com.
Yes.
All right, Wally, you got like 1 minute for some parting thoughts for the social equity community that joined us this evening.
We're here for it. Thank you to the Department of Cannabis. Thank you, Dr. Mani. There's a lot of folks, you should know there's a lot of support teams in the community, operators. We've mentioned it earlier in one of the other ones, the supply chain works together. And these people that are opening alongside you, they're not your competition. You all have an opportunity to learn together, and you have to, or the whole system doesn't thrive. Everybody, I mean, this is what is the nature of cannabis and what makes it special. And there's a lot of people that have been waiting for you to get open. So congratulations on getting it this far. And always feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to engage as much as I can. And I know I'll be running into some of your faces sooner than later.
All right, Wally. Thank you so much. You can go ahead and stop your slideshow, and I'm gonna have some parting thoughts for our audience. I hope you have a wonderful evening. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Have a good one. Bye.
So thank you so much for attending this webinar this evening. The full course for this topic is already available in the BLC LMS that we have noted many times tonight. So you can get way more detailed information on tonight's vital subject matter on inventory management. And many templates are also available for you to use to support your business planning efforts in this same LMS. So as April begins to come to a close, we will have one more installment in these educational series. This Thursday, April 28th, we'll be taking a deep dive into moving cannabis merchandise through the cannabis supply chain, an advanced topic on transportation and delivery with Angie Panuelo Ruiz, the Director of Industry Relations at Distru Software. This event, again, will be this Thursday from 6 to 7 p.m. I'd also like to share some other key info. Before you leave, please fill out a brief survey to share your experience tonight. We are dropping the link for the survey in the chat now. We really appreciate your feedback, and we will use your feedback to fine-tune these webinars moving forward. Also this Thursday on April 28th, the DCR will be hosting a virtual job networking opportunity. You can upload your resume as a job seeker, and employers can hold one-on-one video interviews in the virtual platform. The link to this event is in the chat so that you can sign up for more information. And this same link allows you to RSVP for employer recruitment coaching for social equity applicants. And there are some more details about this Thursday event. It's going to be held virtually, like I said, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Employers can identify and schedule one-on-one interviews with candidates throughout the whole 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. time period. Licensed cannabis business owners will be able to interview workers who self-identify as local, social equity verified, and transitional. And these folks are going to help satisfy your good faith hiring requirements were mandated by the city of Los Angeles. And job seekers will be able to connect with full and part-time, event-based, seasonal, and temporary work and explore career pathways in the cannabis industry. And for those early birds in the audience, a virtual exploration and video tutorial for this networking event is already ready to view in the platform. So go ahead and follow that link in the chat and sign up for this. Additionally, social equity employers who need to assess, increase, or develop their workforces, they now have access to free human resources coaching for equity licensees. Sign up to receive individual or small group mentorship specific to your needs, whether that be how to recruit, hire, train, or develop your team while fulfilling LA's good faith hiring requirements. You can register for your free personalized workforce development coaching session by following the link that's being dropped in the chat now. And this Friday, April 29th, will be our final installment in our series of one-on-one business assistance sessions for this spring. These sessions are for operating or aspiring social equity licensees and are dedicated time for you to discuss your business goals with the same subject matter experts from this webinar series. These office hours can be easily accessed by clicking the Zoom link that we're providing in the chat now. And we'll be hosting these sessions in the following categories. So again, this Friday from noon to 1, we'll have patient and consumer safety with Tiffany Watkins. From 1 to 2 p.m., we'll have retail operations with Maha Hawk. From 2 to 3 p.m., we'll have delivery operations with Robert Fierro. And from 3 to 4 p.m., we'll be exploring the business of cannabis distribution with Angie Pumela Ruiz. And from 4 to 5 p.m., we'll be looking at manufacturing operations with Dr. Stephanie Gangano. Again, this next set of one-on-one coaching sessions will be this Friday, and this will be our last installment for the spring series. You can register for all April events by going to tinyurl.com/DCR April events. So on behalf of the Department of Cannabis Regulation, I'd like to thank you for attending. Have a great night, and I'll see you real soon.